Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass podcast. This for UFC 274. I'm Paul Shaughnessy. I'm all alone. This is where I'm usually sitting or standing whenever I do all of Pat's shows. Pat's on vacation. He's in France smoking de longues cigarettes. But we'd never leave you guys empty-handed. It's been a tough run, tough month. April is probably the worst month betting I can remember in a long time. And with a little cherry on top, I was on Jake Collier, and Jake Collier loses a split decision to Andrei Arlovski. Not that my co-host, Cody Saftic, didn't warn me about. I knew what I was getting myself into. It kind of played out similarly to what I thought was going to happen. But, yeah, I don't know what deal Andrei Arlovski has with the judges, Cody, but I need to be making those types of deals with the judges, because it's kind of out of control at this point. If it's a split decision, Andrei Arlovski is winning.
Yeah, you knew when Saul D'Amato was the last judge that they announced. You knew you were screwed right then and there. But yeah, I mentioned it. Andrei Arlovski is everybody's favorite fighter. He's been on the roster since '97. He's fought everybody, all the stars from like two different generations. Crazy. So if there are close fights, when you fight Andrei Arlovski, they're usually pretty close fights. They're going to give it to him. You can never really scream robbery. You know what you're getting yourself into. But it's amazing to me that he's like 6-1 in his last 7 fights, only lost to Tom Aspinall, legitimate contender, and currently riding a 4-fight winning streak. The money's there to be made if you just spam bet Andrei Arlovski. But, you know, you have a brain, and your brain tells you that's a bad idea. And then, yeah, split decisions. Again, Paul, what can you do? I will agree, though. We were coming off a really hot run. And now the month of April has just been very disastrous. Last week, Andre Fialho, that was a big killer for me. Knocked out in 41 seconds versus Joe Anderson Brito, a guy that's 1-0, 0-1 in the UFC. You know, knocks him out in 41 seconds. But that's the game. Crazy things can and will happen. So all we can do is kind of shake it off. We knew that last week was a week-looking fight night card where a lot of underdogs figured to come through. And now we move from that to a decent-looking pay-per-view card where you probably have a little bit more faith and have a little bit better read. So again, all we can do is dust ourselves off and hopefully get back on the winning trail.
Yeah, let's pitter patter. Let's get at her. We've got the main event of UFC 274. In the main event, we've got Charles Do Bronx Oliveira taking on Justin the Highlight Gaethje. Minus 165 Oliveira, plus 145 for Gaethje. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward type of fight here. Is Charles going to be able to get it to the ground? If he is able to get it to the ground, my word, who has better BJJ than Charles Do Bronx Oliveira? On the other side, Gaethje landing kicks. He's so aggressive. Those leg kicks are going to be an absolute nuisance for Charles Oliveira. It's a situation where I like Charles Oliveira. He doesn't even necessarily need to get the takedown. Minus 165 is scary. Gaethje is tough. But I think Do Bronx eventually is going to find his spot. He's going to find his neck and get the job done. I would prefer, frankly, the under 2.5, which is priced at minus 145, though. I think Gaethje either melts him at some point in the first 2 rounds, or Oliveira grabs that neck, grabs a limb, and grabs himself a sub. What do you think about this fight, Code?
Yeah, much of the same. I mean, I don't know that it's super straightforward just because there's a lot of crazy things that can and probably will happen in this matchup. I mean, the way both guys fight, you've got one of the most potent finishers in UFC history in Charles Oliveira, the UFC submission leader, versus Justin Gaethje, who's literally every time he steps into the cage, it's considered one of the fight of the year candidates. So, yeah, I mean, I could see a lot of hecticness. I could see a bloodbath. And there was a time where I would just say, hey, Justin Gaethje is cast iron. Guy's going to fight hard, 5 rounds, bring the pain the entire time. As long as he's conscious, he's coming after you. And he's going to break old Charles Oliveira, whose heart's not quite in it. But, like, that myth has been disproven a long time ago. Like, Charles Oliveira is willing to go out on his shield nowadays, fight through things, and persevere when he needs to. And that's what kind of makes me a little bit sketchy on the price tag here. I do have Charles Oliveira. I think the fight eventually hits the ground. And when it does, I mean, Charles Oliveira on top of you is going to be a beast. But the way he's fighting is greasy, to say the least. Now you're going to hit him with a minus 165 price tag with it. I don't know if I can come to that. You look at his last 4 fights, primarily 4 fights ago with Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee's all over him early, but, Kevin Lee is Kevin Lee, and he tends to just gas out really quickly. And, of course, he does exactly that, especially at 155 pounds. Lee gasses out, but it's not like he looks particularly early going to that fight. And then his last 2, Michael Chandler's got him half knocked out. He's down. A lot of refs are thinking about stepping in on this one. Chandler's delivering it to him, but he gets up and he gets that victory. No doubt about it, a big power puncher like Chandler can clip him, can hurt him. And then the follow-up Dustin Poirier fight, it's the same thing, Paul. There's refs out there that would have stepped in and stopped that fight. He's getting dropped by stiff jabs. I mean, he gets wobbled 3 times in the first round alone. Like, he is out of it. And then Dustin Poirier, I don't know if he tires. I don't know if he had an injury. I don't know exactly what got to him. But when he stops putting that pace and that pressure, that's when Charles Oliveira is able to work his way back into it. Gaethje's not going anywhere. He's never going to go anywhere. I'm not worried about his cardio. He trains at elevation. He's always in phenomenal shape. He'll fight to the bittersweet end. That's for damn sure. He's been wrestling since he's 4 years old. He had a D1 collegiate scholarship once upon a time. Can he go out there and stuff Khabib's takedowns? No, perhaps not. Could he go out there and stuff enough of Charles' takedowns that he could just cause this to be a stand-up battle? Yeah. And if it's a stand-up battle, who do you trust more? His chin or Charles' chin? Probably Gaethje's, right? The reason why, other than horse racing, my boy Charles Oliveira harness horse, aside from that bias, the reason why I find myself kind of leaning towards Charles Oliveira as this moment is that Gaethje's real wild in everything he does. Like, I wouldn't say it's sloppy, but it's wild, it's reckless. He overextends himself. He throws fastball right hands. And I think at some point he creates a whole lot of openings for opponents. He only shows like career takedown defense of 77% in the UFC. Against like Charles Oliveira, a guy like Charles Oliveira, he just needs that one opportunity to get in on the legs, grab a hold of you. He took down Tony Ferguson rather easily. He took down Dustin Poirier once he decided to grapple rather easily. And one figures if he wants to take down Justin Gaethje, perhaps he can. Once he does hit the ground, then he's going to be all over him. Like, Gaethje's grappling's okay, but he got triangle choke by Khabib Nurmagomedov rather effortlessly, mounted triangle choke. I would think Charles Oliveira on his back could have a great potential to choke him out. But, just the price tag minus 165 in a fight that could go all over the place. Yeah, I wouldn't be feeling it. What I would try to do is similar to last week. I like Marlon Vera, but I knew the fight would be crazy. I had initially said it that I'd hedge out on this spot. I'd hedge it. But Feely blew the ticket. And this week, I'll probably have Charles Oliveira at the top. Who do I trust him to go with? I don't know. Main thing is if I can get 2-3 lines of tickets going into that main event, I'm not stupid enough to let this one ride. I understand the danger being presented. I just got to lead towards Charles Oliveira. And last but not least, you made a great point with Justin Gaethje. He's going to be blasting those legs. He's a notorious leg kicker. Even Khabib Nurmagomedov said, oh, man, my leg couldn't have taken a whole lot more of those. Problem is when you throw those leg kicks is you open yourself up to the takedown. And when Gaethje fought Khabib, he doesn't fight like himself. He's super hesitant because the whole time he's just waiting for that shot to eventually come. And when it does, he gets taken down. Charles would be the same thing, I think. I think if he throws the kick, Charles might be able to catch it, convert it into a takedown. Even if Charles just doesn't chain wrestle the way Khabib does, which I don't expect him to, just press him up against the cage, get him to make a mistake, and then take a rear waist body lock, take the back that out, take a standing back take. Once you take that back, I think it'll be Charles Oliveira all day. But 5 rounds is a long time, especially with Justin Gaethje. So if I can get that far, I'll hedge out. The pick is officially going to be Charles Oliveira, minus 165.
We move to the co-main event. We've got a rematch, but, it's happened so many years ago that it's tough to say that Rose Namajunas is the same fighter that she was back then. Rose Namajunas is a minus 210 favorite taking on Carla Esparza. The Cookie Monster obviously needs to be searching for takedowns early and often here. If you're Rose and you're Rose's camp, let's be honest, all you've been doing this camp is sprawl training. Like, that if this fight stays on the feet, that Esparza cannot compete with you whatsoever. If you're Esparza, like, it's kind of brings you back to like the old days in terms of like certain matchups and how they play out. Like, this is striker versus grappler. Rose has some decent submissions on the ground, but if she's on the ground against Esparza, that's how she's losing this fight, fighting off of her back, trying to get back up. I think Rose rights the ship here, gets back on track. It's a very, very straightforward fight for her. Minus 210, maybe a little bit wide. I see some people taking the dog shot on Esparza. I would rather, if I was going to bet Esparza, see if she gets a takedown early. Maybe you get something in the live markets. If she gets an easy takedown in round 1, you're not gonna get the plus 175. Don't get me wrong, but maybe you can get like a plus 130, plus 120, that type of situation. If she doesn't get a takedown early, you're pretty much starched. So I'm gonna go with Rose to retain her title here. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a favorable fight for Rose Namajunas for sure. I think the UFC was not particularly interested in running this thing back, even though Carla Esparza had won previously. Dana White's expressed it many of times. It's like, oh, what about Esparza? What about running? But nah. But now the timing's right? I mean, Rose has kind of fought the same fighters over and over. She got two fights versus Wang Zhailei, and then prior to that, 2 back-to-back fights with Jessica Andrade, and then prior to that, 2 back-to-back fights with Joanne and Jacek. So she's fought the last 3 people in her last 6 fights. She needs a quick little freshening up here. They know she's a marketable star. They know she's extremely talented. It makes sense right now to run back the fight with Carla Esparza. As you mentioned, once upon a time, Carla Esparza was the best wrestler in the division. You can capitalize on that. You can take down opponents. That was a lifetime ago when she fought Rose Namajunas. And again, Rose starts off well on her feet, but when she gets taken down, she gets overwhelmed. Since then, it's been a lot of wrestling training. And you saw in the last fight versus Zhang Weili that she does get taken down 5 times, but the grappling is obviously top notch. And what wins her the fight going down the stretch is her own offensive wrestling. It's something that she spent a lot of time working with. I saw this really interesting take the other day going through it, and was basically all centered around the fact that Carla Esparza actually isn't physically all that strong, and that she probably won't be able to just go out there and outmuscle Rose the way that she once did once upon a time. And it ends up being, it's Tatiana Suarez talking, right? Tatiana Suarez, of course, fought Carla Esparza. When she fought her, she's like, this girl's not that strong. She gets away with wrestling lower end girls in the division, but against a world champion like Rose, someone who's been putting in the time physically down the stretch, she'll overmatch her. It was an interesting take because this is someone that's fought her. And of course, Tatiana Suarez is the best wrestler in the division.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at Rose, I think she's made the improvements to her grappling that even if she does get taken down, she's going to be able to nullify her. She's going to be able to work. She's going to be able to land strikes off of her back and eventually free herself and get back up. Once the fight is standing, I mean, there's a huge disparity in the actual striking acumen in favor of Rose Namajunas. So she should be able to chop her away. And then interestingly enough, if you look at Carla Esparza, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, she got 13 fights in the UFC, right? She's never fought into a 4th round. They've never put her in these big headlining fights. She's never fought a 4th or 5th round. She's never been championship rounds. What she can do is secure 2 of 3 rounds against lesser opposition, such as Alexa Grasso, Verna Jandiroba, Michelle Watterson, Marina Rodriguez, Yan Jonan. None of those girls have challenged for a title. Michelle Watterson, sorry, she was, at one point considered a top talent, but you know what I mean? She's fought in lesser talent. She can take them down. She can smother them. I know she's been making strides in her striking, but not enough to strike with Rose. Her wrestling hasn't really gotten all that much better. It's just good enough to still continue to do what she's always done. And against Rose, I think she's going to run into that roadblock. Championship rounds definitely favors Rose as well. She's got good cardio, she's able to persevere. And I just think at some point she could get a late 4th or 5th round stoppage, or she could just win this fight by decision. The price tag's what, -210 Rose Namajunas currently. Totally agree with it. I think it's a good price tag. You've got the defending champion at just a smidge over 2-1. And I think the matchup favors her. And as you said, good live betting opportunity too. Whereas like Carla could potentially win the 1st round, but then I think Rose is going to find her rhythm, find her role, start to stuff the takedowns and make her pay after that.
Yeah, makes sense to me. All right, moving on down. We've got Michael Chandler taking on Tony Ferguson, -380 Chandler, +290 for El Kukui Tony Ferguson. Went back and watched the Ferguson versus Dariush fight, and even when the fight was on the feet, I mean, Tony looks washed at this point. It's not looking great for him. We're probably at the end of the line. He is tough. He is durable. I see a lot of people taking Michael Chandler round 1. Well, Tony's been knocked out once, and it was against Justin Gaethje, and it was like kind of like a mercy stoppage in the sense that Tony was just taking so much damage that they said no mas. It's really, really hard to get to Tony Ferguson at this point. I think Michael Chandler wins, but 80% of the time is a bit of a different story. That's what you have to do to cover a price tag of, it's -380 at DraftKings Sportsbook, but it's -400 pretty much everywhere else at this point. I think Chandler wins Probably not round one, maybe maybe he gets a finish, but I'm actually been kind of more interested. I see some alternate lines out there for like fight goes to decision plus 150. It's going to be, you'll have your butt puckered the entire time, but Ferguson has just historically been super durable. He'll probably eat a whole bunch of shots. You'll think at many times that you're not going to win this bet. And then it gets to the final bell and you cash a plus money ticket. That's where I would be putting my money. I haven't put it yet, but that's what I've been considering. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't like the price tag as well. I feel like Tony Ferguson is that crazy live dog. And I hate to say the word crazy because I think he does suffer some mental health issues, but the guy's nuts. He's nuts in his own way. And he brings the fire. He can grapple. He can strike. He's been a fan favorite for a while. He's a bit of a weird guy, no doubt about it, but like he's delivered the goods in the octagon at a very high level. Is he on a 3-fight losing streak? Yeah. Does he look himself? No, not really. But the guys he's fighting are world class. Beneil Dariush, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje. Maybe you can write him a pass in that sense. It's when you look deeper, you peel back the onion. It's like, when was the last time he legitimately looked good? So his last fight against Beneil Dariush, he doesn't look good, right? Gives up 3 takedowns. He landed 15 significant strikes in 15 minutes. I think it's a career low for him. Striking looks off. His grappling looks off. He gets absolutely smothered and out-wrestled. He does not look himself. Bad performance. The fight prior against Charles Oliveira, he had a legitimate chance. A lot of people are backing him because he's got that pace and he's got that style. Charles took him down with ease, out-grappled him with ease, and virtually put himself in no bad spots. Tony landed 19 significant strikes over the course of 15 minutes. Again, it's like his second career low. It's a bad performance. The fight before with Justin Gaethje, this in one hand, he puts up good numbers. You know, it was a fun fight. It was back and forth. I wouldn't say he looked terrible. I just wouldn't say he looked great. He got hit by basically everything Justin Gaethje threw. The rounds 4 and 5, he's basically out on his feet. And the referee, as you said, it was a mercy kill. Like, dude, it can't in good conscience. You got a family to go back. You can't in good conscience allow you to keep taking shots. And it's deep in the 5th round. So accumulative damage definitely hurt him. But now he's got wins before this, right? The Donald Cerrone fight. He looks awful in the first round. He's getting beat up by Donald Cerrone. And then Donald Cerrone blows his nose, swells up his eye, quits himself. The fight prior with Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis beats his ass in the first round. And then he breaks his hand or something stupid and he wants out. The Rafael Dos Anjos fight. He got hit 121 significant times. The Lando Venata fight. He got dropped by Lando Venata. This is a whole stretch of every time Tony Ferguson fights. Doesn't really look all that good. It's that he's able to pull the victory from the jaws of defeat, make that big comeback, work his way back into it. And now what you're seeing in these last 3 fights is that the magic's not there anymore. It's just not happening. Against Michael Chandler, he's giving up a big wrestling advantage that if Chandler wants to take him down, he's going to. And there was a time where I was like, oh, Ferguson's going to be throwing out triangles. He's going to be rolling for heel hooks. He's going to be doing all this crazy stuff. But, like, it's just, it doesn't work. It's not effective. Like, you can't be going for Imanari rolls. You can't be doing this crazy, funky stuff. And I think that's what's let down Tony Ferguson. His game hasn't improved. You watch training footage of him, Paul, and it's just like ninja crap in his garage. Like, he's doing like these Bruce Lee workouts, and he's by himself largely. He's not out of camp where he's got these training partners that are taking him to improving his game, doing this thing. He's always just been the best guy in his surroundings. He's Tony Ferguson, I'll fight anybody, Suplex City, Snapdown City, full of his own shit, right? Whereas you got Chandler moves over down to Sanford MMA, puts himself in the fire with some of the absolute best guys in the planet. And you can see that Michael Chandler is still making those improvements. He showed off all types of toughness his last fight against Justin Gaethje. If for whatever reason Ferguson was to show up in vintage form, Ferguson's not a one-hitter quitter. He's a volume guy, right? Well, I think Chandler can take everything he's going to throw out. But Chandler's ability to A, mix in the takedowns, is going to be a good path to victory. But B, you can give up 100 significant strikes to some guys. They're not big hitters. You can't be getting cracked by heavy punchers clean in the face. Beneil Dariush, I wouldn't consider him to be, a heavy hitter. Charles Oliveira, guy's got some pop, but I wouldn't consider him to be a heavy hitter. Gaethje swings. Gaethje swings heavy. Gaethje plants his feet. You saw how beat up he got in that fight. Chandler's going to do the same thing. He's going to line this guy up when he's got his head up in the air, when he's on one foot doing some stupid rinky-dink kick, and he's going to blow his head off, right? Dan Hooker had never been knocked out either, and Michael Chandler arguably ruined that guy's chin because he'd never been the same since. Ferguson's 38 years old now. He's been taking some beatings. He's not fighting the way he used to. 100% I agree that Chandler should win. But I still have difficulty coming up with that price tag of minus 380. Like, he's 36 years old. He fights a reckless style.
Mm-hmm.
And he's taking on a guy that, is still probably considered to be a top 10 talent in the world. So, like, is 380 the most appropriate price tag? No. You and I discussed this off camera before the show started. Problem with, a perceived reason why maybe we're not having the best run lately is a lot of these lines are steamed up.
Yeah.
They're steamed up because they're released months in advance. People are on them
especially
quickly, right?
Especially for pay-per-views.
Yeah. And you know what the smart thing would do? You and I can't do it because we're contractually obligated to do a show every week. But last week, if you would have just said, yo, hey, Paul, dude, screw doing a show this week. Let's just take the entire week off, not even bet any of these fights, and just spend the entire week and hammer these things early for the pay-per-view. Then you just get on this stuff early. Now you don't. You do the show on a Wednesday. You're 2 days out of weigh-ins. The lines have been steamed, and now we've got to advise you. You're going to bet a guy like Michael Chandler at 380, even Charles Oliveira at minus 165. Like, those are going to be some tough fights. But, I don't know. I'm not complaining. It is what it is. We do what we do, and I think we're going to get back on the right track. I just mean it's kind of a deep price tag for me at this moment.
Well, it becomes a situation where does Chandler win 80% of the time? I'm not so sure. Do I want to bet Tony Ferguson? Not really. Like, I could definitely see Ferguson, if these guys fought 10 times, I could definitely see Ferguson winning 3 times. Maybe he scoops up like a Darce on like a sloppy takedown later in the fight. Maybe he knocks Chandler out. Like, Chandler's been knocked out by a bunch of dudes. Ferguson hasn't looked great. He looks absolutely washed. He's a shell of what he used to be, but yeah, when you start getting into the math, it's like, I don't know if this is 80-20, but I'm also a little bit too scared to back Ferguson. Another fight that I want to pay attention to live, more so in the idea of like maybe taking a crazy shot on Ferguson, as long as he doesn't get like melted in the first like 5 minutes, because Chandler can go the distance. Don't get me wrong. His cardio isn't that bad, but I expect Chandler to absolutely dominate early, probably land big, and if Ferguson survives, things could get interesting. We move on down to the heavyweight or light heavyweight division. We've got OSP taking on Mauricio Shogun Rua. Surprisingly, only a year or so separates these two guys, which is kind of shocking because Shogun feels like considerably older than OSP, but I mean, in fight years, I suppose he is. OSP hasn't been looking great either, though. The line here is minus 240 for OSP, plus 195 for Shogun. Here's my problem here, Code. The legend, Mauricio Shogun Rua, tapped due to strikes last time out. I was rewatching him versus Paul Craig. And I mean, he was in a situation, he wasn't getting out of it. So what is he supposed to do? Just like take shots half to the back of the head from Paul Craig until the ref stops it. There's probably only a few more shots. But just the idea of seeing a warrior, the guy who fought Dan Henderson at UFC 139, seeing him tap due to strikes, it left a pretty bad taste in my mouth. OSP has been fighting up at heavyweight, light heavyweight, kind of bouncing around, missed weight for his last light heavyweight affair at 207.5 pounds. So the weigh-ins will be super interesting in this one. I guess it's a dog or pass situation again for me here. Like, OSP hasn't been looking great himself. He's super slow. It's probably pretty good matchmaking, but like, are you really going to have the cojones to pull the trigger on Mauricio Shogun Rua? I can't say that I do right now. What about you?
Yeah. This is one of those fights where it wouldn't have mattered if you try to get on this thing a month ago. You need to watch the weigh-ins. Weigh-ins is the biggest thing. Because OSP should win this fight. The rematch likely wins this fight. But you got to see those scales because that's what's been killing OSP lately. Keep in mind that this is the trend, is that he had fights booked at 205, and I don't know why he took the Ben Rothwell fight at heavyweight, but just kind of out of the blue, he jumps up to heavyweight. Fights at 240, weighs in at 240 pounds against Rothwell. I thought he looked terrible. He threw hardly anything. He surprisingly dropped Rothwell twice. Like, that's got to count for something, right? But at the same time, he just looked extremely diminished, lethargic, not himself, not overly interested. It says split decision, but it should have very clearly been a unanimous decision. loses that heavyweight, drops back down to 205, does make weight against Alonzo Menefield, very slow, trepid pace, but he knocks him out. Fair enough. And then the Jamal Hill fight. So it's not just that he misses weight at 207.5, is that he had a reported leg injury coming in, had a terrible weight cut. His coach was like, no more. You need to stop right now. First time in his entire career that he's missed weight. I think that screams volumes about how bad the weight cut back down to 205 was from heavyweight, right? He did make it against a Menefield, but there's a reason why he ballooned up to 240. He's a naturally big guy. And now being 39 years old, you know, you've seen how thick this guy is. Like, he's not going to get any smaller, put it that way, right? I think he probably did some bad damage to himself in the Jamal Hill fight. Shows up. Again, he's not moving his feet. Didn't fight a terrible first round, truth be told, but he loses the first round, gets knocked out in the second. And then, of course, moves back up to heavyweight. This time comes in at 230 against Tanner Boser. And I didn't think he looked good against Boser at all. Boser not notoriously the biggest power puncher, but overwhelms him and puts him away. So now the guy's lost. He's non-competitive at heavyweight, where he's gone 0-2. He's having a really tough time making light heavyweight, which is the only place that he's, really effective. If they were to offer him some middling guy at light heavyweight, he'd turn it down. It's the fact that they offered him Shogun Rua, the legend, the guy who he beat already in Brazil with that like wide ass hook that come from left field. That's the kind of fight you get excited for, and you say, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll diet. I'll go back down to 205 for it. It all sounds good in theory, but his body's going to start to break apart the lower he drops that weight. I think that's why you see these injuries start to rack up and later on in his career. And if he comes in on the scales at 2.7, like slight miss, even if it's like if it's a 10-pound miss, 5-pound miss, I'd feel better about it. He misses weight by like a pound, a half a pound, which is entirely possible. It's a problem because he's given away 20% of his purse. And when you make $100,000 a show, that's significant. You make $10,000 a show, you're willing to give that up. It really doesn't matter. You just want to fight. I think the scales will be extremely telling. But that being said, I think he beat Shogun Rua. He's been competitive. He was competitive against Ben Rothwell. He just lost a split, right? But he moved up to heavyweight and at least gave him a go, dropped him a couple times. Beat Alonzo Menefield, of course. Beautiful knockout. The Hill fight. Hill is a top three, maybe is he a top 3 or top 5 light heavyweight in the world? One of the best guys in the world right now. And again, I mean, he gave him somewhat of a go early on until the bad weight cut and all that stuff caught up to him. Tanner Boser is a heavyweight. There's excuses that can be made, is all I'm saying. When you look at Rua, there's absolutely no excuses to be made. His last 3 fights have been just a shell of himself. The first fight with Paul Craig, he got absolutely torched in the first round to the tune of a 10-8 round. And then Paul Craig gassed himself out. Rua wins rounds 2 and 3. It's a draw. The Nogueira fight, literally the only guy on the roster that you can match him up with competitively, because Nogueira is also completely shot to bits, 175 in fight years, and going to be a low output striking battle. And that's exactly what it was. Very strong argument, by the way. The Shogun should not have won that split decision, but that's fair. And then he rematches Paul Craig, and this time there is no Paul Craig gassing out and him coming back. He absolutely gets smoked. As you mentioned, he taps due to strikes. That's okay, because I remember he tapped due to strikes versus John Jones as well. It's just not for him, man. He's a legend. He's one of the biggest Pride stars. He was one of my favorite personal fighters of all time. First UFC I ever attended in person and drove out to Montreal, Quebec. Watch him win the UFC light heavyweight title from Lyoto Machida. Got robbed in the first fight in LA. Second fight in Montreal, and he won. And it was like Shogun's the man. But he had bad knees back then. And it hasn't got any better for him. He's done a good job of like fighting, periodically so he doesn't rack up a ton of damage on him. But when you see him go in there and compete, he's not the same guy. He's not as dynamic. He doesn't have the leg kicks. He doesn't have that crazy shoot to box, Curitiba style, move forward, move side to side, dynamic striking, BJJ black belt. That knee bar that he got Kevin Randleman with, a beauty, a work of art. But unfortunately, that guy's not there anymore. And even though obviously St. Preux ain't really what he used to be, I just think he's been fighting a lot more lately. He's been fighting the better level of competition lately. He's been giving a better account of him lately. And this is a sport of what have you done for me lately? So I got to retain with OSP here.
Makes sense to me. All right, we have another Legends fight coming up here. We got Donald Cowboy Cerrone taking on Joe Lauzon, minus 165 Cerrone, plus 145 Lauzon. Kind of thought that Lauzon was done in the UFC, to be perfectly honest. Haven't seen him since 2019. And, it was a good performance from him back in 2019. But I'm more interested in the under in this fight. I think that both of these guys are going to come out there, kind of put on a show. It's minus 165 to the under. 2.5 rounds. I haven't made the bet yet. There's another fight later down the card that I'm interested in parlaying. The fight doesn't go to decision with the under in this one. We've seen with Lauzon, like, especially later in his career, obviously he can't take the damage that he used to. He comes out and he's a super fast starter. He's going to come at you. He's going to, like, ask Jonathan Pierce all about that. And Cerrone is a slow starter. It's like if Cerrone can get bombarded early, I wouldn't be shocked. I looked at the odds for it, and I think it was like there was like a 10-1 out there. Wasn't as excited, especially like Joe Anderson Brito last week was 22-1 to win in round 1. I wish I'd seen that. That's insane. I mean, I probably still wouldn't have clicked it. I didn't foresee that happening. I liked Feely myself, but I think it's like 10-1 Joe Lauzon. So like they're already kind of wise to it that Lauzon maybe comes in, bat out of hell. Cerrone, slow starter, sometimes gets finished that way. Yeah, this is a battle of 2 rounds. I expect Lauzon to do pretty well early, bring hell and fury to Donald Cerrone, and if he doesn't get Cerrone out of there early, it's going to be the Cowboys show. More interested in fight doesn't go to decision and the under 2.5 rounds than picking a side here. For the purposes of the show, I'll say Cerrone doesn't get nuked early on and prevails. But yeah, Joe hasn't shown me in a long time. He hasn't been to a decision since 2017. I feel like if he doesn't get Donald Cowboy Cerrone out of there super early, the writing will be on the wall. What do you think about this matchup, Code?
Yeah, this is an awesome matchup because on one hand, you feel bad watching Donald Cerrone these days. He's not the man he used to be, but you still got that fan favorite in him. And yeah, it's hard to see the old cowboy taking his lumps and bruises. And the same thing goes for Joe Lauzon. He's a fan favorite. He's been around the game for so very long. Ultimate Fighter Season 5 veteran, I believe. He's been around for a long time, right? Two fan favorites probably should be retired. But if you're going to match them up against each other, yeah, it's a fun fight. It makes a lot of sense, right? It makes sense to give these guys winnable fights that the fans are going to dig. But at the same time, you're not fighting some young up-and-comer, someone that's just trying to steal your name or add a little shine. Like, I get it. For Lauzon, it almost seems like Uriah Faber effect, right? Where it's like, this is my retirement fight, guys. I'm going out. They're like, Joe, we're going to give you a fight in Boston. Perfect. Retirement fight in Boston for Joe Lauzon. Dream come true, right? He gets Jonathan Pierce. He knocks him out in a minute and a half. Like, what a great way to ride off into the sunset. Same thing with the California Kid. He beats Brad Pickett. I want back in. And he beat Ricky Simone after that when he came back 3 years later, just because you can't sit on the win. It's not a great way to retire. Fighters will just think about it too long. I had another one in me. You got to go out on your back. So Faber comes back and he fights Peter Yan. Why would Uriah Faber be fighting Peter Yan? Doesn't make any sense to me. Because if you want to compete, you want to compete at a high level, and you want to earn these paychecks, you're going to have to fight. Dana White's already expressed earlier, this is a loser leaves town matchup. Donald Cerrone loses, he's done. Career in the UFC, not you're released, you're done. It'll be they talk to you and kind of ask you to pleasantly retire. And maybe they offer you some type of role within the company so that you're still making some money. Lauzon, meanwhile, this is the first fight in 3 years. He had already more or less retired. If he loses this, I think he just goes back to coaching and doing his own thing. And by the way, he's got a bunch of good fighters in the gym. Like, he's got stuff to do outside of this. So it's just a fun fight. Both guys should be able to go out there. My thing with Joe Lauzon is essentially the Jonathan Pierce fight. He bum rushes him. He knocks him out. The way Jonathan Pierce is fighting in the UFC now, incredible, right? So it's a fight that aged excellent, right? The guy's making his debut, and you're in Boston, but it's a win that still carries a lot of weight. You got to look at the fights prior to that. So against Chris Grutzmacher, it's the worst Lauzon's ever looked. He got absolutely picked apart by Chris Grutzmacher, stopped in the second round, after the second round when his corner told him, Joe, you can't do this anymore. He got hit 128 significant times against Grutzmacher, only landed 48. Bad move. The fight prior to that, he got knocked out by Clay Guida. So Clay doesn't knock out anybody, right? Not something in his arsenal. He'll take you down. He'll grind you. He'll do that. For Clay to knock somebody out standing with an overhand right minute 7 seconds into the round, like, that's a really bad look. The fight prior to that against Stevie Ray, he got outlanded 109-46. Stevie Ray, not very good, absolutely picked him apart. The fight before that is a win against Marcin Held, in which he held up Marcin Held's hand after the decision, grabbed the mic and said, I did not win that fight. Marcin got robbed. Did he not? Bad performance. And the fight before that against Jim Miller, crazy fight, but that's a rematch, and that's a rematch where the first fight was absolutely bonkers, crazy pace, and you saw years later from the first fight, the rematch, he just didn't look himself. So the Jonathan Pierce fight, he looked reinvigorated, he got that win, but I can't deny the fact that 5 fights prior to that, he looks abysmal. And yes, he's fighting the Chris Gruetzmakers of the world, the Marcin Helds of the world. Like, it's not the highest of level of competition. Cerrone, I get he's coming off a loss to Alex Morono, who's proven to be more than serviceable, by the way. But at least he's fighting some of the top guys in the sport. At least he is capable of showing something still. I just feel like he's got a little more left in the tank. I'm also encouraged by the fact that he hasn't had an MMA fight in 1 year. That's significant to me because he fought 3 times in 2020. He fought 4 times in 2019. Sorry, did he fight 5 times? 4 times in 2019, 3 times in 2020, 3 more fights in 2018. His whole career has been a lot of the wear and tear, a lot of the rigors of fighting multiple times. And I think after that fight with Alex Morono, it appeared that Donald Cerrone is officially shot. It's good that he took a year off to at least see, are the reflexes still there? Is the ability to take damage still there? Ultimately, what it comes down to is he's a better striker than Joe Lauzon. He's more refined. He's got better selection. I think he's going to have the output if it goes down the stretch. He's got the leg kicks alone. If it comes down to a grappling match, he's a better wrestler than Joe Lauzon. And of course, Lauzon's a black belt submission artist, but is he going to submit Donald Cerrone in an MMA fight? Like, I'm not fully sure about that. Donald Cerrone hasn't been submitted in an MMA fight. Is it ever? Has he ever been submitted in an MMA fight? Yeah, okay. Benson Henderson in
I've got like
2010.
30. I've got 37 windows in front of me trying to switch the show.
Yeah, no.
So I'm not
all good.
I can't.
He got submitted by Benson Henderson in 2010. So of course, 12 years ago he was submitted. Since then, he's been pretty cast iron. People will point to the fact that he's been submitted in a couple grappling matches since his last MMA fight. Craig Jones, one of the top grapplers in the world. Joe Selecki, I didn't quite understand that one, but whatever. It's a grappling match. It's just a pure BJJ match. Like, Lauzon's going to have to take him down, walk through the strikes, take the damage, grind him, control position, take his back, catch a choke. A little bit harder, I would think. It's hard to have faith in either side just because of their advanced age and the amount of just sheer wear and tear that both men have had. But I think Donald Cerrone is the rightful pick. And at minus 165, it doesn't seem terrible.
Fair enough. All right, I'm just going to stick to the under in that fight, to be perfectly honest. Moving on down, we've got Andre Fialho taking on Cameron VanCamp. Minus 400 Fialho, plus 300 VanCamp. Who do you got here?
Yeah, well, I would think Fialho just absolutely kills VanCamp. Well, I shouldn't say absolutely kills, but anyways, VanCamp's from Kentucky. He's fought in really low levels. So you look at his wins, and some of them show 6-0, 6-0, 8-2. Like, it's not the worst looking run, but it is in fact very low level. He shows some nice wrestling in those fights. I don't know how much of a takeaway I can take that from an elite level. You can go out there and get easy money takedowns against lower level guys. When you come to the UFC and you're taking on some of these guys that have grappled, they might be at top camps, they might be former college wrestlers. That's when you'll be able to really see what he's got. And to this point, I haven't quite seen it. Striking looks okay. His grappling looks okay, but he's super hittable standing. And I think that's the real difference maker for me against Andre Fialho, is that Fialho is just a big power puncher. He's been training at Stanford MMA. He's been getting a lot better. You see the improvements in his last couple of fights since being released from Bellator and LFA once upon a time. If you stand with him, there's a good chance he's going to clip you and knock you out. Signs with the UFC, fights Michelle Pereira. You and I are on Pereira. I load up on a personal level, on Pereira. And the whole fight, it's like I seriously underestimated Fialho. He's not as chinny as he used to be. His striking's tight. Third round, he looks completely exhausted. He's in on short notice. His corner's like, how much do you want this? And he comes out and he fights his heart out in the third. Does lose the fight, but I was encouraged by that. Encouraged enough that I bet him against Miguel Beza as an underdog, because Beza is a defensive liability. Let's be real here. And if you want to stand in front of Fialho and have some crazy firefight, some point you're going to get clipped. Guy without a chin like Beza can't get behind it. And so in that point, he knocks him out. That becomes my issue with Cameron VanCamp, that he hasn't had a fight. He hasn't had a fight in just about a year, right? He hasn't fought anybody like Fialho in his career. He hasn't fought, and he's shown to have some defensive liabilities himself. I don't think he's ever been knocked out. Sorry, he has been knocked out once in his career back in 2015, so 7 years ago. But I think it's a level thing. And now I saw some people mentioning the fact that Andre Fialho, he's in on short notice, right? He's taking this fight, quick turnaround, and he's a guy that's had cardio issues in the past, but like he literally just competed like 3 weeks ago. So like, I don't think he took not a whole lot of damage against Beza, knocked him out in the first round, got paid a nice sum of money, went back to the gym, get back going. Still only 28 years old. This is the prime of his life. I think he's going to be ready to go in there. VanCamp making his UFC debut, bright lights, a little bit slower. His head's there to get hit, certainly. If he comes out to a slow start and gets tagged, Fialho puts him away. The price tag, again, is a little bit big just because I expect Cameron VanCamp to just come out swinging. But I think the rightful favorite obviously should be Fialho, and I'm not willing to go the other way on that one.
And I'm not going to disagree with you whatsoever. We got Khaos Williams taking on Rude Boy Randy Brown. Minus 120, Khaos Williams. Plus 100, Randy Brown. Who you got here?
Yeah, so technically this would be the first underdog shot because, of course, every card needs their underdogs. And even though it's only plus 100, it's basically a pick 'em fight. I do see myself leaning towards Randy Brown. I've been really encouraged with what you see out of him lately, in that he's figured out how to use that length and that range. I mean, of course, he's a big, tall guy, but he stays to the outside, and he's got an excellent jab, excellent low kick. You just got to be able to use those long range weapons to your best advantage. Of course, when he loses, it's to pretty high end guys. His last 3 losses: Vicente Luque, Nico Price, Bilal Muhammad. So there's nothing to shake your head at there. It's in the wins. He seems to just be getting a lot better and a lot more comfortable. So against Cowboy Oliveira, 2 fights back, you see much improved grappling out of him. He goes out there, outstrikes him, hurts him, chokes him with a one-arm rear naked choke. It was like, man, Randy Brown's finally turning the corner, putting it all together. So again, this is a guy who banked hard against Jared Gooden on the basis of Gooden likes to sit down on his punches and swing, a little bit wild, a little bit heavy, and Randy Brown should just play touch, go. Randy Brown got hit by some hella shots in there. But his chin looked good. He rolled with everything. He ends up outlanding him like 115-85. Striking looked good, looked long. This is not the Apex. They're fighting in pay-per-view, big cage in Arizona. He's going to have all that distance to work with. And I think he probably just stays to the outside and tries to outpoint Khaos Williams. Williams has got tremendous power. Absolutely, guys, just got killer power in his hands. But that was more so shown in his first 2 UFC fights, Alex Morono and Abdul Razak Al Hassan, where he knocks one guy in 27 seconds, one guy in 30 seconds. 2 wins in the UFC, less than a minute. Nice work. Since then, I think you see his limitations. He's faster than I gave him credit for. Of course, he's got the big power. He seems sturdy. Seems like he's got a good chin. And of course, for a guy that basically came out of prison and jumped right into MMA, this guy's actually progressed way better than a lot of people in his situation would have. You can't discredit what he brings to the table. But again, I think when you look at his last 2 fights, the Matthew Semmelsberger fight, he tired down the stretch. He didn't deal particularly all that comfortable with the length of Semmelsberger. And honestly, in another world, I think Semmelsberger could have won that fight. And then his fight with Beza is actually very closely competitive throughout until he knocks him out in the third. And he didn't look himself in that fight. There was no big volume. There was no big pressure. Like, he was winning the fight. It was mostly a whole lot of leg kicks being exchanged. I didn't think he looked great. So what I've got now is one guy with tremendous power, but seems to be stalled out in his progression within the sport. And I got another guy in Randy Brown who's been cashing tickets, looking more fluid, looking more comfortable, using his long range to his advantage. And this is another style clash that he should be able to go out there and do exactly that. So listen, it's probably dog or pass. It's a close matchup. I do get it. Need an underdog. Going to take Randy Brown as an underdog. But of course, even calling him an underdog is very generous. He's plus 100. Tomorrow he could be minus 105 and be the favorite all of a sudden. So take it however you want. But I do have Randy Brown.
Seems like the money has been moving that way. I agree with you. I think if this turns into a volume affair, Randy Brown probably edges it out. It's going to be relatively close. We've seen Khaos Williams put up 91 significant strikes is the most. Randy Brown, 115 last time out. He just need that chin to hold up. Obviously, he lost to Vicente Luque, but Luque's going to be a tough matchup for either one of these guys on any given night. So don't really lose too much there. I think the biggest advantage he could have is if he can get this fight to the ground. He's shown some glimpses of solid grappling, which I think he can use. I think he's just a more well-rounded mixed martial artist, so I'm with you. Plus 100 on the underdog, Randy Rude Boy Brown, is where I would be putting my money on this fight. All right, moving on down, we've got Big Norm. Norma Dumont taking on Macy Chaisson. Big Norm has a big price tag, minus 225, plus 185 for the dog Macy Chaisson. This one's really annoying to me because, I mean, I feel like Norma Dumont has won when she was fighting at like 135. She wasn't actually making weight. When she's fighting at 145, she's fighting people like your girl Aspen Ladd, who really aren't featherweights. You kind of, Ladd lost that fight for herself in that one. Just not really throwing anything, never really going for any sort of takedowns. Going back and watching, I know that she took the fight on short notice, but like Dumont taking on Megan Anderson at 145 pounds, another tall opponent, an actual featherweight in my opinion. And when she wasn't able to take her down, there was a lot of standing cage control, all of that. And it's like the moment that she faced any sort of adversity, ate a clean shot, she absolutely just folded. Watching Macy Chaisson last time out against Raquel Pennington, I was really hoping that I would be like, all right, here's a dog shot I want to take. And really, there wasn't too much for me to be excited about in that spot. I'm really, really torn on this one. I know it's a women's MMA fight, so this is kind of silly, but I don't mind the under 2.5 plus 180. I could see either Big Norm getting the takedown, fishing up a submission, or Macy Chaisson landing some knees and elbows in the clinch, or just landing something clean and finding a finish. Seems a little bit crazy to be betting a women's under, but that's my favorite spot in this, or favorite betting spot, I suppose, of this fight. I suppose Big Norm, lots of standing cage control, wins a greasy decision in a lot of situations, I suppose. But I don't love this fight whatsoever. Do you?
No, not really. I mean, Macy Chaisson's moving back up to 145. So what could you really like there? She hasn't particularly looked great at 135 pounds in recent fights. I think she's going to be a little bit undersized against Dumont. I think she's probably a better striker than Dumont in the sense that she could throw more output. She could throw, the more diverse range of attack, but she got eaten up by one punch and one punch alone against Raquel Pennington. That was the jab, right? She's too wild. She doesn't move her head. She's a defensive liability. I think with Dumont showed, yeah, she'll probably try to smother you up against the cage, could complete a takedown. But even in the Aspen Ladd fight, she didn't really complete much of any takedowns. I think she got one through 25 minutes, but her technical boxing is just a little bit sharper, a little bit clean. I think she'll just jab up the middle. My problem here is with Chaisson that moving up to 145, she could feel a lot better. She could not have to cut the weight. She could come out. She'd be looking to throw caution to the wind, push a bit of a pace. And I just don't think Dumont does anything spectacular enough for me to back her, but she's got a slight grappling advantage. I think she might have a slight striking advantage in the sense of she'll outland her, right? And outlanding your opponent largely counts for lots unless your opponent's landing some big flashy stuff, which I don't really see out of Macy Chaisson. But it's women's MMA. It's a fight that you think under, that's fair. I'm kind of leaning towards the over on a personal level. Chaisson, her last fight was a submission loss, but her prior three had all gone to pretty safe decisions. Norma Dumont, meanwhile, her last three fights have all gone to pretty safe decisions. But that being said, this Felicia Spencer fight is razor close, could go either way. The Aspen Ladd fight, and by the way, Felicia Spencer fought the world's worst game plan. She never tried to take her down. Then Aspen Ladd fights the world's second worst game plan, which is just don't even do anything. If somebody goes out there and actually puts a proper game plan together, I don't think Dumont's all that good. And for that reason, getting to that minus 210 price tag is a little bit off for me. I feel like I am going to take her. I feel like I'm going to take her very low on the list of priorities. If you're someone who just likes to chase a dog, this is not a bad dog price because it probably is closer to a coin flip or a dog or pass situation. I just feel like Dumont's been doing better recently and actually does fight at 145 and does have perceived advantages in a couple key elements of the game. So she should probably be the rightful favorite, just not to the tune of minus 225. So official pick will be Dumont for now. I'm going to keep my eye on weigh-ins to see what Chaisson looks like. And of course, if you're thinking dog shot on Chaisson, I wouldn't disagree with you. Like, I think there's some sense in that. I can't come to it myself.
That's fair enough. All right, we got Brandon Royval taking on Matt Danger Schnell. A fight that's been booked, I feel like, a couple times already, and different things have made it fall out. Schnell had some sort of issue with like the LA commission or the California commission and yada yada yada. Where are you at with this one, Cody?
Yeah, so those are all fights with Alex Perez, actually, but it seems like he's had some terrible luck. He was supposed to fight Alex Perez at UFC 262. He was supposed to fight him again at some fight night card last August. He's supposed to fight Perez again in December. That's when he had those medical concerns. And then he was supposed to fight him in February, and Perez missed weight. So, yeah, if you're Matt Schnell, you have not fought now in a year. Yeah, I think it's 1 week, less than a year, almost a year to the date since his last fight against Rogerio Bontorin, just because he's been taking these, fights with Alex Perez and they keep falling through. So where he's at, I'm not entirely sure. I think one thing with Schnell that we always knew is that his chin doesn't seem to be great. He can't take a great shot, but he's done an excellent job of just, improving his striking so that he's not there to get hit quite as much, moving his feet, trying to use his takedowns, trying to set up some groundwork. Schnell does a good job of being serviceable, albeit I think against fairly low-level opposition. His wins, Marco Beltran cut, Naoki Inoue cut, Louis Smolka, I believe, is cut. If he's not, he probably should be. The last fight was terrible. Jordan Espinoza cut. Tyson Nam, again, I don't even know what Tyson Nam's up to. I have a feeling he's cut. And it was a split decision, not a particularly great fight. So he's capable of beating those lower-end guys, largely with his grappling, improved striking, a little more volume than a guy like Tyson Nam will carry him the way. But when he takes on these power grapplers, guys that are a little physically stronger than him and better grapplers, they just plow him to the ground. Rogerio Bontorin plows him to the ground. Alexander Pantoja, again, same thing, just too physically strong for him, knocks him out in the first. I think Brandon Royval has all of that. Like, I would say that Schnell's a little bit more technically sound than Royval in terms of he throws his punches a little snappier, a little bit crisper, a little bit straighter. But Royval's just wild and reckless. Like, what he does throw is unorthodox. It's over the top. It's stuff you don't see coming. He dropped K. Cara France. That's got to count for something, right? Cara France is an elite level striker. They got a hell of a chin on him too. So I think Royval, when he's at his best, he can actually have a lot of success with his striking, just catching you off guard, but it's predicated on catching you something and then shooting right for the takedown. Once he gets the fights to the ground, that's where he excels. Again, when you look at the level of competition that he's beating Tim Elliott. He's beating K. Cara France. Tim Elliott's a current top 7 guy at flyweight, coming off the biggest win of his career and against Tagir Ulanbekov and moving forward. You've got K. Cara France is a legitimate shot at getting the next title fight at 125 pounds. He's in the running. Those are legitimate wins. Losses to Brandon Moreno, the former champion. Loss to Alexander Pantoja, a perennial top 5 guy in the division. A win over Bontorin, the guy that beat Schnell fairly handedly. This is all good stuff. This kid's operating on a very high level. His cardio, where it was suspect at times, I think he's done a good job of improving it. Does train at altitude, getting more experience, figuring out how to put it together. The Bontorin fight, he had a terrible first round, but he fought back. He tired Bontorin out, and he kept going through the second and third. So there's a lot that I think you can like from Royval. I think he can beat him standing. I think he can beat him on the ground. Is a little bit wild and reckless to put a ton of faith into? Yes, but I think he's the rightful guy. Minus 240, don't mind it. I am going to play him. And Schnell has a way of pulling off the win when you don't see it coming. So if he does, God bless him. He's going to cost me a lot of money. As we talked about earlier, April hasn't been the best month because those bounces, those guys you really need to have come through, just can't quite get it done. If Royval comes through here, I need him to be one of my guys on this card. If he does what I think he's capable of, I think he can make this look easy and get it inside the distance stoppage.
What do you think of the under here? Yeah, so
yeah,
you just said,
under, yeah.
I mean, you didn't say anything until the last second. I had that question queued up in my brain, and then you're like, and he probably gets the finish. So yeah, this was the other fight that I was looking at getting the under 2.5 rounds. Obviously, you talked all at length about Matt Schnell and his chin issues. Not that Royval is like some sort of big time power puncher, but he just lands so much volume in such a furious pace that something could clip him. And he's got some decent submissions in his own right. So I think the minus 145 to the under 2.5, where fight doesn't go to decision, I think is like minus 170. That's what I like. I'm picking Royval as well to get the job done. Matt Schnell, I don't think I've ever picked him though, and he's made me pay a few times, but Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get to Royval on the money line. More interested in the under. Not that, well, the problem with Royval is, and why that under I think could come into play, is sometimes Royval sets a pace that he can't keep himself. So maybe Schnell,
Yeah,
Schnell's not
exactly.
exactly a big time finisher by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe Royval sets a pace that he cannot keep and then just kind of wilts. So the under, when I was talking earlier during the Cerrone fight, that there were two unders that I liked. It was Donald Cerrone and Joe Lauzon under 2.5 rounds, or fight doesn't go to decision. Not sure how I'm going to approach it. I may parlay the fight doesn't go to decision between these two fights. And hopefully I can get back on track. We need to get back on track.
This is a good time to do it.
There's no time like the present, Cody, to get back on track.
The calf slicer, the Peruvian necktie, the banana split. There are tons of ways to come out on top in the octagon, and for UFC 274, there's one more. With DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. New customers can bet $5 on any fighter to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. So choose your fighter, then sit back and watch the action unfold. Anything can happen on fight night, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, you've got a sure thing for UFC 274. Bet $5 and get $150 in free bets if your fighter wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DOP. Throw down $5 on any UFC 274 fighter to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. That's code DOP this Saturday at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
All right, moving on down. This one's an interesting fight. We got Blagoy Ivanov taking on Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Blagoy Ivanov hasn't fought in like a year and a half. He's minus 145 favorite. Marcos Rogerio de Lima can be had for plus 125. Obviously, Marcos Rogerio de Lima coming off of that Ben Rothwell, like first round finish, terrible stoppage. Herb, you bum. He just didn't give Rothwell any opportunity to survive in that situation. Still pretty bitter. Still riding the bitter bus about that one. Blagoy doesn't get finished though. And Marcos Rogerio de Lima probably doesn't have a wrestling advantage in this spot either. And like that's how when Marcos Rogerio de Lima has been going to decision in a bunch of these fights. Why is that? It's because he's able to get a takedown and just hold position. We saw it throughout the entire fight against Maurice Green, right? 3 takedowns, all of the top control time. But it's like, if he's not doing that, if he's swinging bombs and he's not knocking out Blagoy Ivanov, I really, even at heavyweight, maybe his gas tank's fixed. I don't believe it. I think he's still a gasser. And I think if he doesn't knock out Ivanov, who seems pretty much indestructible, he's gonna lose this fight down the stretch. Blagoy doesn't throw a lot of volume whatsoever. He can be a little bit of a tilting guy to back, but I feel like Blagoy is the side here and is not particularly close. I'm surprised that the line is this close. I haven't bet it yet. Wanted to hear what you had to say, but that's where I'm at on this one. What about you, buddy?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Blagoy Ivanov, the way he matches up against Rogerio de Lima could give him a whole lot of problems. So that being said, the last time Rogerio de Lima fought against Ben Rothwell, I had pointed out the fact that Ben Rothwell hadn't been knocked out in a very long time, since Cain Velasquez, I think, and that ability to just take the punches and come through and tire him out was going to win Ben Rothwell the fight. Maybe second round, but he was going to win the fight. And then, of course, he goes out there and does drop him. I know it was an early stoppage, but at the same time, the guy's got a whole bunch of power. So when you do fade him, and by the way, 100% I'm going to fade him here. Yeah, at least you're going to have to clench your butt cheeks for the first minute or two, because he does got that ability to go out there and slug on guys. But I think if you're Blagoy Ivanov, you look at this guy's story, right? It's like, hey, man, you think you're durable? Go fight Derek Lewis, one of the best power punchers that the sport has ever seen. He lasts with him. What about Tai Tuivasa, the crazy shoey-drinking, shit-eating wild man from New Zealand, the Samoan with all the power in the world?
Who's knocking out everybody.
Took all of his punches. Junior Dos Santos, former world champion. Guy's got a chip on his shoulder. He wanted to get back in contention. He was still junior back when junior meant something, right? Took all of his best punches. What about that time he took a combat sambo match with Fedor Emelianenko when Fedor was like a 6-time reigning champion and hadn't lost an MMA fight in 10 years? And you beat him. What about that time some motherfucker... Oh, I got to bleep that one out. Time code during the Blagoy fight. Some dude stabbed him in the heart in a nightclub in Bulgaria. He was in a coma for a month. Didn't kill him. The guy is so cast out. You ever seen the movie Snatch? Remember Boris the Blade? You just can't kill the guy, right? That's basically Blagoy Ivanov. He's Boris the Blade. You can't put the guy away. And I think that in itself is huge here because Rogerio de Lima needs to just drop them coconut bombs on you quick, right? He's got big old hands. He likes to swing. He likes to put guys away. He's got a BJJ black belt, but it's a fraudulent BJJ black belt. What black belt gets forearm choked? I get it's Romanov. I get that. But a forearm choke, like, come on, it's a joke. The Stefan Struve fight, he gassed out after the first round and gave up an arm triangle choke. His submission defense is weak. His wrestling defense is weak. His cardio is weak. He's just got a killer amount of power and shockingly decent enough takedowns. He could take a guy down. In this case against Ivanov, he's not taking Ivanov down. Why? Because the former combat sambo world champion has excellent takedown defense. Those big shots early, whereas he might connect on a few of them, I don't think he's going to knock out Ivanov. So you have two things happening, in my opinion. Either Ivanov takes his best punches, returns fire, and you got Rogerio de Lima is going to fold over, or Rogerio de Lima is going to start to tire himself and Blagoy is going to take him down. Blagoy on top of him, Rogerio de Lima is going to have nowhere to go. Could be a ground and pound stoppage. Could be a lot of just holding the guy down. I get Blagoy hasn't fought in a minute. You know, is that going to affect him cardio-wise? He didn't really have the greatest cardio to begin with. But he's one of these guys that just kind of like kept trucking. It's been 2 years. I'd like to say he made improvements. Chances are he probably hasn't. He's 35 years old. I don't know that cardio has improved with him. The beauty here, though, is that he's fighting a guy that's got no cardio and likely has made zero improvements to that as well. So I think it's a super live fight. The reason why it's closer than it probably should be is the 2-year-long absence for Ivanov, the suspect cardio, where he's at. He's coming off a couple of split decision losses, so the judges don't really tend to favor his style. But of course, some people scored the fight for him in the Sakai fight. Some people scored the Derek Lewis fight for him. He's competitive against much better guys than Rogerio de Lima. Yeah, so I think he should be able to get the victory here. But, you know, middling heavyweights, and we know how that sometimes goes.
And the big question that we have is a massive layoff and all of that. And yeah, he is not a very exciting or high volume striker. He could lose round one. This could be a situation where you want to pay attention. Does Rogerio de Lima blow his wad trying to finish the unfinishable in round one, and then Blagoy takes over late? That could be kind of an angle that you take as well. But I'm struggling to get spots on this card. So Blagoy is going to be one of the spots that I add when we get off the air. I DM'd you, by the way. I got your back. I DM'd you where you dropped the F-bomb for your television purposes. The people on the interwebs, they can handle it, but not so much on TV.
I just had a vision quest jump into my mind here, and I think it's going to win us back all the money from the month of April. Well, right? It's a long play. It's a long play. Blagoy is going to win the Marcos Rogerio de Lima fight. Okay, part one of the vision. Part two, they're going to book Blagoy versus Andrei Arlovsky. Then Blagoy is going to comfortably win all 3 rounds, and Andrei Arlovsky's going to win a split. So we're not going to bet Arlovsky or Arlovsky by decision. We're going to bet the split.
We're going to wait.
We're going to say the first judge has it 30-27 Blagoy because he was actually paying attention. Yeah. The second judge has it 29-20 Arlovsky. Because he's
holding a Arlovsky by decision ticket.
Yeah, and the third judge is Saul D'Amato. He just woke up right now, but hey, Arlovsky is the oldest guy in the building next to him, so let's go with Andrei Arlovsky, the pitbull. And then we're going to cash that split decision prop over Blagoy, who will get screwed, and it'll all be good times for everyone not named Blagoy.
That's
how we get her down. Man.
Do we just bet Arlovsky by decision in fights that he's like clearly down rounds at this point?
He's a live betting animal.
In one of my,
be like, yeah, he lost the first 2 rounds.
In one of my group chats, they were hitting plus 450, and I was, I didn't say anything because I'm already on Jake Collier as it is, but I'm like, I'm scoring all of these rounds for Collier. And then when I heard it was a split, I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God.
You knew right then.
You knew right then that it was happening to me. I mean, Jake didn't pull enough ahead for it to be like, I mean, he should have won the fight. Let's bygones be bygones. We move on from that. But yeah, that was a particularly difficult beat, considering that we're bringing it back up when it has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now. But yeah, Blagoy will, that totally makes sense. So we'll wait for Blagoy to be up 2 rounds, and then we'll bet Andrei Arlovsky at like 10-1 by decision, because that's what's gonna happen. All right, we got Grandpa T taking on Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts. Grandpa T can be had for -120. Danny Hot Chocolate plus 100. Who you got here, buddy?
Yeah, this one's going to cost me a lot of money, as I'm sure it always does. Why? Well, two things really. Danny Roberts always costs me money because when I back him, he just makes bonehead decisions at the wrong time, man. His ring IQ is suspect, absolutely suspect. He's very talented. He was a good striker. He's coming over from Cage Warriors back in the day. It's something that you can get behind him, but just notable spots, man. Oh my God. So much sharper, so much more technical than Mike Perry, and yet Mike Perry just bum rushes him and knocks him out in the 3rd round. Crazy. The Nordine Taleb fight, he got knocked out in 59 seconds, right? Of course, these are fights he definitely had shot in. The Claudio Silva fight. This dude is dead. He's dead on his feet. He has no gas left in the tank. He's flopping over to his back, attempting to pull a guard, just falling to the floor, and he armbars Danny Roberts in the 3rd round. Just very embarrassing. Pereira, a flying knee, it's going to happen, but Pereira doesn't really land that stuff anymore. But guys like Danny Roberts, their guys are going to get caught with stuff like that. It's been tough. And then you know what? I'll give him credit. He is at Sanford MMA. He seems to be still making improvements to his game. He's not all the way over the hill. He's 34 years old. Like, one can imagine that he's still serviceable enough, but the wins aren't great. The Zalima Madaya fight was okay, but that last fight with Ramazan Ameev, I don't know, could have gone easily against him. He was controlled up against the cage largely. It's just like a slow bog of a fight. His takedown defense is not all that good. Again, he makes a lot of questionable choices in there, and he's not above just getting grinded out by someone who's below him. Now against Ameev doesn't throw any strikes. He literally only holds you up against the cage. So judges are just salivating at the idea of not scoring the rounds for him to prove him a lesson. Dude, you got to do something. That's kind of what happened in the Roberts fight. With Trinaldo, meanwhile, dude's 43 years old, but he's got an uncanny ability of just grinding guys up against the cage, scoring takedowns when need be, letting his hands go need be, and just somewhat pushing a pace overall. I feel like at 43, he's still got enough to maybe beat Roberts. But if you're going to give me ever so slight dog status on Danny Roberts, I feel like I would have to say he's going to be my underdog number 2. I have to hope coming off the last fight, he's going to be equipped to deal with the style of Trinaldo. Sanford MMA, of course, is going to have him hopefully with the right game plan and being in shape. And let's be real, this is the big octagon, right? They're in Arizona. It's going to be the big cage. He's going to have much quicker footwork. He's much faster. His output seems to be a little bit better. He's a little bit sharper and more linear. He needs to win the first 2 rounds and just survive the 3rd. But I could see this thing going either way. I could see it being a decision and it being one of these greasy split decision types. I wouldn't want a ton of investment on it either way, but I think my official go here is going to be with the underdog, Danny Roberts, and just know that Hot Chocolate probably gonna drop a hot chocolate in the apple pie, as he tends to do.
You know me and how much I love Masarin Duba over the years. Just such a legend. It isn't pretty, and the volume isn't always there. Actually, the volume usually isn't there. It's usually pretty slow paced. I want to up the stakes, make this interesting for myself. We haven't done a shoey bet in a while. I don't know if I'm going to get to the window with a Grandpa Trinaldo bet. But you want Roberts, I'll take Trinaldo. I think everything that you said is 100% true. Roberts is going to land. He's going to land a whole bunch. He's going to be dominating the fight. And then eventually, at one point, late in the fight, Grandpa T is just going to land one left hand. He's going to get, Roberts is going to get stank legged. And Grandpa T is going to, be absolutely crush Father Time once again. That's kind of how, I don't really want to get there because I'm like, man, he's probably going to be down rounds. He's going to be giving up a whole bunch of, he's going to be eating a whole bunch of shots. He's not going to win the volume in this fight. If I'm not confident that Grandpa T is going to be landing takedowns at will either. I think he's losing this fight right up until the point where he gets Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts out of there, and the bad chin of Danny Hot Chocolate shows up again. Yeah, it'll be very much like the like the Jai Herbert fight, where Grandpa T losing that fight. I think I got like plus 800 or plus 1,000 for Grandpa T inside the disc, or Grandpa T. No, I think it was just Grandpa T money line. Like after 2 rounds, he's losing, but I was just like, all we need is one big cleaver from Grandpa T, and we're on our way. So yeah, Shuey bet me and you. That's the way I'm gonna play this. Grandpa T for me. I'll never pick against him. Moving on down the card, we have Tracy Cortez taking on Melissa Gatto. Tracy Cortez, a minus 155 favorite. Gatto can be had for plus 135. Who you got here, Cody?
I think you just got to monitor the scales again in favor of Tracy Cortez. I like her. I like what she brings to the table. I think that she probably struggles a little bit to make weight. You saw in her last fight against Justine Key, she came in at 126.5. So that's a miss where you missed by half a pound, which would indicate that you did everything in your power to make it and just couldn't. And then she proceeded to look very lethargic in there against Justine Key. Part of the reason why you like her is you like to back these girls, women's MMA, of course, who have the wrestling advantage, have the grappling advantage. I think with Tracy Cortez, someone who's got very nice wrestling, I think there's multiple members of her immediate family, like her brothers, were all very high-level wrestlers. And, of course, she's been friends with Henry Cejudo for, like, a very long time. She trains out of Arizona. They're marketing this fight in Arizona. Tracy Cortez is going to be one of these fan favorites, no doubt about it. And she uses that wrestling. On the contender series, Maria Agapova can't wrestle for absolute abysmal wrestling, so she gets the easy money, 4 takedowns. Vanessa Mello, easy money, 2 takedowns, 79 significant strikes landed, lots of ground and pound, looks good. Stephanie Egger, the 3 takedowns landed. The ground and pound kind of evaporated in that fight for me. She could get the takedowns when she wanted, but, a lot of it is just positionally holding it down. And then Justine Quiche fight. So Quiche has been, she's 1-1 in Bellator now. She's no longer with the promotion. She is physically strong, but she does definitely lack the grappling prowess. So I would think that this would be a good matchup for Tracy Cortez. The bad weight cut is everything, though, because now she gets dropped by Justine Quiche, probably because of the bad weight cut. She struggled to take her down as much. She struggled to keep the rhythm and the pace going. And that, to me, she wasn't the greatest performance per se, but it's a year ago. And I think when you're young, and Tracy Cortez is 28, trains out of Fight Ready MMA, one of the best camps in the entire world, is going to be the fan favorite. They've booked this fight for a reason. She's still got the wrestling, one of the best wrestlers in the division. That is all going to carry her a long way. Melissa Gatto, meanwhile, so her jiu-jitsu looks pretty legit, but just keep in mind in the Eubanks fight, Eubanks takes her down early in the first round and just neutralizes her. In the second round, Eubanks takes her down and she hits a sweep. Like, her grappling's legit. Eubanks is big, strong, heavy, BJJ black belt, Team Lloyd Irvin, and has had a lot of success at a high level of grappling. And she got swept by Gatto. Like, right then it was like, ooh, we got some serious problems here. Gatto's got a striking advantage over Cortez standing by way of she's just going to keep throwing volume, right? You saw in the Victoria Leonardo fight, she's got volume. She sits down on strikes. She throws power and she breaks the girl's arm. She shows a win over Carol Rosa by first round Kimura. Long layoff in between fights since that, but she's operating at a very high level. And again, her jiu-jitsu is going to be awesome. Is it good enough to just get taken down and submit Tracy Cortez out for back? Not fully certain. So in a fight do you want the fighter that's going to be on top or the girl that's going to be on the bottom in a grappling style fight? Because it's going to be a grappling match. Tracy Cortez wants the takedowns, probably going to get them. Gatto's got a very active guard, probably going to fish for submissions. The difference to me is that Eubanks has got bad cardio and gassed, and that's what allowed Gatto to take over. Whereas Tracy Cortez, assuming she has a good weight cut, should be able to keep pace, get the takedown, stay on top, stay out of harm's way. Again, if you're looking for a live underdog, I would say that Melissa Gatto is one. I would say women's MMA, again, could be tight. It's grappler versus grappler. Both of them will have their opportunities, but I tend to go with the wrestler. So I'm going to go with Tracy Cortez at home.
I took the underdog shot on Melissa Gatto at plus 147. I just think, she's pretty strong. Like, if you look at the Eubanks fight, like, her back muscles are fierce. Like, this is not just like any run of the mill. I mean, she's undefeated. She's 8-0-2 in her career. Grappling is super solid. Obviously, she had that sweep against Sarge that Sarge was super tired. She got taken down. I am fearful that Cortez can take her down and just hang out in that guard. But while she's hanging out in that guard, she is going to be fighting off submissions because this girl is very active off of her back. If this fight stays on the feet, Cortez, I think, is in a big world of hurt. I just couldn't pass up the dog money. I think this fight's more 50-50. Maybe the Arizona home cooking could come into play in this situation. I'm a little bit fearful of that. Cortez gets takedowns, stays out of submissions, but maintains top control and lose the fight. But I think it's more of a 50-50 fight, so I took the dog shot on Melissa Gatto at plus 147. Moving on down, we've got Clayton Rodriguez taking on CJ Vergara. Clayton Rodriguez is a minus 320 favorite, whereas our guy, CJ Vergara, not CJ Saftic, fake CJ, is plus 250. I was impressed by Clayton Rodriguez's ability to... I thought in his fight on Contender Series, I was pretty impressed by his defensive capabilities. Guy barely got hit. He was taken down. The opponent that he was taking on had like a decent wrestling pedigree. He got taken down twice, but he was able to get back up to his feet pretty much immediately. And his striking defense looked really on point. This seems like a very, very well-rounded fighter. CJ Vergara, on the other hand, his Contender Series fight, obviously he gets a first-round finish. Guy swings hard, he hits hard. Takes on Odie Osborne, and round 3 was definitely coming on. Odie's starting to slow down, but Vergara has already lost the first 2 rounds at this point. All I really see for him, for the most part, is he really throws a looping left hook, and Clayton looked defensively sound enough that I think he covers this price tag, but Contender Series making their debuts in front of a large crowd, it's a little scary from that perspective. So I guess it's a pass, but I'm picking Clayton to win in this spot. I do think that he's a real decent prospect coming up into this division. What's your take here, buddy?
Yeah, exactly the same thing. I think Clayton Rodriguez at 26 years old has got a very promising future at 125 pounds, and I'm excited to see what he brings to the table. You watch the stuff from him on the Brazilian regional scene. Yeah, he's technically very sound. He's got excellent knees right up the middle. He's got excellent elbows in tight. He fights good at range. He fights good in close distance. Takedown defense could use a little bit of work, but his grappling seems to be on point. When he came on the Contender Series, it was like, this guy looks pretty legit. The guy he's fighting was okay, but yeah, you saw a complete performance out of him, right? I think, yeah, bright future, good striking, going to mix it all together. Good, right? CJ Vergara, meanwhile, when he took on Bruno Correa, I wasn't expecting much. He shows on the regional scene again. He's going to come forward. He generally moves on a straight line, doesn't have the greatest footwork, doesn't cut off the angle of the cage, but yeah, he's willing to mix it up. He's willing to engage, and he has some decent power. He shows pretty much all of his wins. Second round knockout, third round knockout, gets on the Contender Series, knocks out Bruno Correa in 41 seconds as a plus 170 underdog. Cost me some money there. And then signs and comes to the UFC. Couple things here is that the Odie Osborne fight, he missed weight. He came in at 127.4, so he misses weight by a pound and a half. And then the first round, Odie's way faster than him, way sharper, and just snipes him off from distance, wins the first round. Second round, Odie's slowing a little bit, but OJ just stays to the outside, uses the jab, uses his kick, snipes from the outside. Third round, Odie is tired. And of course, the guy that didn't make weight is still fresh as a daisy. He comes at him. He puts on an excellent third round, no doubt about it. But one has to imagine, had he made the weight, could it have been different? I don't know. And also, where was that sense of urgency when you needed it? When Odie was feeling himself, he just sniped him away from long distance for the first 2 rounds, and that's what I think Clayton Rodriguez will be able to do. Beyond that, Clayton Rodriguez is a badass in the cardio department. That fight with Santo Curatolo on the Ultimate or on Contender Series, he first round he outstrikes him 23-40, right? Or sorry, 23 out of 40 strikes landed. He outstrikes him 23-7. Second round he lands 30 significant strikes, right, out of 47. So he lands more than the second round and throws more than the second round. The third round, he lands 38-51. So he's like a steam engine. He's only getting better. He's better in the third round than he is in the first round. Like, his volume's not going anywhere. He's looked good all throughout. And Vergara, meanwhile, lost the first 2 rounds and relied on the guy getting tired. In this fight, he's going to lose the first 2 rounds and realize the guy's not going anywhere and probably lose that one too. So I would think I'm leaning towards decision for Clayton Rodriguez, but he's one of the guys on the card that I do like, yeah.
All right, we've got Lupita Godinez taking on Ariane Carnelossi. Lupita Godinez is a minus 170 favorite. Carnelossi can be had for plus 150. Originally, you know me, women's MMA, I was thinking like, okay, I'm looking for a reason to bet Carnelossi here. And I mean, her last performance, it was a nice little performance for her. That was, I would say, the peak of the Carnelossi experience. And you know, on the feet, she was getting banged up a little bit against Estela Nunes. Gets the finish in round 3. But I was just like, all right, before we bite the bullet on this, because it was like plus 200 before, and I was just like, it was plus 200 before. People have taken that value out of it. It's like plus 150. I'm like, all right, let's go back and watch the Na Liang fight. And my word, Na Liang goes out there, gets takedown super early in the fight. Carnelossi, right out of the gate. Sorry, she eats a big shot and wobbles. Like, it's a round 2 finish on the, on Tapology, but like, Na Liang looked woefully ill prepared. Hasn't been back in the UFC since that fight. She was like, after round 1, was so gassed that like I think Song Yadong, actually, don't quote me on that, but her corner basically illegally picks her up, drags her back to the corner, like she thought looked like she was gonna die, and then Ariane Carnelossi is able to finish up the job. I mean, my general mentality about that was like, okay, well, Carnelossi, super jacked, super powerful. We've seen with Lupita Godinez, if she's not able to control you because you're bigger or stronger, like the Luana Carolina fight, that's where some issues can come into play. Obviously, we're talking about different levels of height here altogether. But yeah, the Na Liang fight really scared me off of the ledge. Maybe if it was plus 200, I would have been taking Ariane Carnelossi with some money here. I'm going to say, for the purposes of the show, I'm going to say it's a dogger pass situation. But I don't love it at plus 150 anymore. What's your take here, buddy?
Yeah, no, I'm going to agree with pretty much everything there. Like, Carnelossi is very strong. She's physical. She shows up in shape. But yeah, her grappling is a little bit suspect. Her takedown defense, that's predominantly the biggest issue with her game, is that, I mean, I got to base it off the one fight with Long Yang, like you said, but they're weak takedown attempts. She gets them whenever she wants them. It's like a glaring issue for Carnelossi for sure. And then in the next fight against Estela Nunes, who's fairly one-dimensional with her striking and no gas tank to her. So those are favorable matchups. You can kind of work a good fight, a good game plan together. But against Lupita Godinez at 115, she's actually got really good wrestling. Her striking is very good as well, sharp, technical, but she's not willing to engage in prolonged striking battles. She's not willing to go and land 60, 70, 80 significant strikes if need be. She's just willing to land 2-3 punch combination, close the distance, grab a hold of you, take you down. And I can't fault her because it's worked extremely well for her. I thought on a personal level she should have won the Jessica Panay fight, but of course they didn't score for her, whatever, doesn't matter. 3 takedowns, outstruck her, not a bad performance. Against Silva Gomez Juarez, 5 takedowns. Against Luana Carolina, the 2. Against Loca Bume, 5. She's scoring multiple takedowns in all of her fights. This one's going to be no difference. Carnelossi will get taken down. Is Carnelossi's grappling good enough to submit Lupita Godinez off her back? No, it really isn't. So what's her path to victory? Sprawl and brawl? Or takedown defense really doesn't look good enough to do that. And even if she could keep the fight standing, Lupita Godinez will tag her up. It's that volume probably would last towards Carnelossi. But wrestling, cardio, pace, all goes towards Lupita Godinez. And the price is really not all that bad either at minus 170. Yeah, I'm licking my lips about this one. But of course, it's women's MMA. It'll probably blow up in my face, cost me a lot of money. I'll be real bitter about it. but certainly pre-flop, I like it, to be honest with you. Minus 170, not a bad price tag at all.
I mean, the price is actually coming back in your favor. So I mean, you're never in a rush anyway to do these things as it is. It seems like you do most of your betting later in the week. It feels like, I mean, yeah, Carnelossi was like plus 200 only a few days ago. So it seems like you may be getting a better price as is. So I would say hold your horses and wait on that line to mature a bit. And finally, we got Fernie Garcia taking on Journey Newson. Fernie Garcia is a minus 150 favorite. Journey Newson could be had for plus 130. Who you got here, buddy?
Yeah, I got to go with this Fernie Garcia. Again, it's a fight that I could go many of ways. He's been around the game for a long time. Like, I think he started fighting amateur in 2011. So, I mean, 11 years ago, the guy gets his first taste of combat. But even looking at all of his losses, his amateur losses, his last two are both by split decision, right? His pro debut, he wins a split decision. His only pro loss against Cody Freeman is by split decision. And he rebounds by beating a 3-4 fighter, Marquis Smith, by split decision. Then he beats Ryan Haynes, who is 9-6, not very good, by split decision. Well, there's your patterns that this guy's in a lot of close and competitive fights. He doesn't really have the stopping ability to put guys away. I know that's a little bit point mood against Joshua Weems of Contender Series. He knocked him out fairly quickly. But again, that's his first knockout win in his entire professional career. And it was his first time not going to the judges' scorecards in his prior 5 fights. So I don't think he's a power puncher. I don't think he's a big, threat to finishing inside the distance. I think he's going to be there to be in a close and competitive fight that goes to the scorecards. And then it's up to what the judges thought they saw. He seems to have a little bit of volume. He seems to, might be able to mix in here and there. It's just, I'm a little bit stumped with Journey Newson because when he came to the UFC, I'm like, he's a pro boxer. He's got some decent hands. This guy could not be a problem for people, but he could be serviceable, right? First loss to Ricardo Ramos. At least is a decent enough guy, but he didn't look very good for my money. Then he knocks out Domingo Pilarte like stiff. 38 seconds, overhand right, beautiful punch, test positive for the reefer, so it's a no contest. And then Randy Costa bum rushes him and knocks him out. And now he's been off for over a year and a half. So here's the problem, dog. His last 2 fights were 41 seconds and 38 seconds, right? Which means essentially in the last 28 months, he's had a little less than minute 20 of cage time. Like, what do you really know about him? What do you expect about this guy? You think he's improved in the last year and a half? Probably. You think he's would have shown something off had he not got starched by Costa so fast? Could be. But it's like a lot of what ifs, right? What ifs could be. Not 100% sure. And for that reason, no faith, but it's a dogger pass situation to me. That flyer on plus 130 on Journey Newson, again, I think he's got the kind of power that he could hurt Fernie Garcia if they keep if the fight standing and he gets these exchanges. Garcia's a little bit wild, a little bit green for my liking. Again, he generally fights to decisions, and they're generally close decisions. He's not some runaway talent, and he's making his UFC debut. Newson, he's been on for so long, he might as well be debuting again. And again, it doesn't fight for a prolonged period of time, but I feel like there's something at least more there that I know of. So this might be all the way on the bottom of the PRP, but I'm going to go with the underdog, Journey Newson.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. And I think what it really came down to for me is watching the Ricardo Ramos fight. Kept it relatively competitive against Ricardo Ramos. Was taken down, but didn't wilt. But yeah, like... I guess Fernie Garcia is like a boxer by trade. This is it's an MMA fight, so we'll see how it all plays out. I'm leaning towards Journey Newsom as well, but there's 15 fights on the card, and I don't necessarily know if I'm going to be getting to this fight particularly with my money right now. Obviously, I'm a little bit gun shy. I got to fix up this setup a little bit. It's been a bit distracting, particularly trying to write in these time codes on the fly is very distracting when you're hosting the show and trying to think and speak at the same time. But, it's a work in progress. Next week, be exact same setup as this. So right now, all I've got is Melissa Gatto plus 135. Or sorry, plus 135 is what is at DraftKings Sportsbook. I caught a plus 147 earlier today. That's all I officially have. I like the under, or sort of fight doesn't go to decision in Joe Lauzon versus Cowboy Cerrone. Blagoy Ivanov minus 145. I think that's a good look right there. And Schnell versus Royval, fight doesn't go to decision. I'm going to figure out how to work those into my card. Hit them with the PRP, Cody, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, hit him with the PRP. We're going to go with Chucky O, Charles Oliveira, Rose Namajunas, Michael Chandler, Ovince Preux, Donald Cerrone, Andre Fialho, Randy Brown, dog number 1. I guess I'll go with Big Norma Dumont, Brendan Royval, Blagoy Ivanov, Danny Roberts, dog number 2, Tracy Cortez, Clitson Rodriguez, Lupita Godinez, and Journey Newson, dog number 3. As Paul mentioned, there's 15 fights on this card, so like I can't even parlay 15 fights on my book. It caps it at 12. So there's obviously stuff that's going to fall by the wayside. There's also a Bellator on Friday. There's a PFL on Friday. There's an LFA on Friday. There's some better options out there. But straight up, just from like a confidence thing, and we can kick the show, well, we can end the show right after this. But yeah, I don't care about Newson Garcia. Lupita Godinez, I'm interested in working with her. Blagoy Ivanov at that minus 150. Interested there. Tracy Cortez is going to hit a pass on that one because I want to see the weight. Pass on Roberts Trinaldo. Brendan Royval, I like me some of that. I'm going to pass on Dumont. You can pass on the Randy Brown if you don't like that. Always little underdog money is always good. Andre Fialho, I think I'll play me some of that. Pass on Cerrone, Lauzon, age veterans. Pass on Chandler if you want. You can take OSP, Rose Namajunas, pass on the main event. That there is 6 good-looking picks, right? Would play plus 818, right? So we're going to structure this better. I think I might also put out some straight plays, some prop plays, just to not be fully involved on the parlay side of things in case something was to go south. But yeah, I think if, especially Ivanov, Godinez, Royval, Andre Fialho, Rose Namajunas, Ovince Preux, none of them are priced terribly bad. I think they all have a good path of victory. We just need to start having them click it together. But that being said, you know what? The last time Rose fought, which was UFC 268, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you and I had Kamaru Usman. We had Rose Namajunas. We had Marlon Vera. Shane Burgos over Billy Q. I might have had Billy Q. You might have had Burgos. I think I screwed up there. But we had Gaethje, Alex Pereira over Andres. No, it was everything but Bobby Green and Alec Quinto. I knew it. I knew that card. I had everything except for Bobby Green and L.I. Quinto.
Yes, the legendary back to real estate for you, Quinto.
Yeah, Chris Curtis won on the card. Imadov beat Edmund Shabazian. We liked him. Ian Gary.
Or yeah, so you didn't hit a PRP, but you had Chris Curtis at like +2 something or other, and like the 8-legger was paying people big bucks. So
Jean Vellante hit a guy with a wheel kick, or sorry, Chris Barnett hit Jean Vellante with a wheel kick. We had Ian Gary was losing and he come back from the depths. Melsik Bagdasarian put it on. Odie Osborne survived that shitty 3rd round to pull it off. Pay-per-views have been good, you know. Last time Rose fought, it was a near perfect completion. Now we got a good-looking pay-per-view. I just need to get those bounces again. We just need to pull together, put our big boy pants on, hopefully come out of things on the other side. So
let's
watch weigh-ins. It's your last bit of info. And beyond that, to better pastures, Paul.
To better pastures. Lord knows I need to be on to better pastures. It's been April was an absolute abomination. And I'm a little bit gun shy. Naturally, I think most people, I mean, the longer, like we've been doing this for like almost 10 years now. So it's like, I've been through rough stretches like this. You bounce back, but it's always tough. And you always start, doubting yourself, doubting your process, doubting, whether you've got an eye for it. I will say, I do think that the markets have become particularly more difficult these days than they were, 3 or 4 years ago, or even at the beginning of the pandemic. Like we were rocking it at the beginning of the pandemic. I think the books have really taken a lot more attention towards MMA in the last 2 years, and it can be a little bit more challenging. Those lines move a hell of. We used to not even get the lines available up until sometimes we couldn't do the show until late Tuesday night because there weren't even lines posted. And then we would say who we like, and by the time the show got released, there was they had already moved considerably because we were basically breaking opening odds. They're out there for months. Kudos to people who are hitting them early. Probably a smart thing to do if you have time to get ahead to jump in and get some early action on it. But yeah, let's get back on track. There's so much MMA this week that's like you don't have to become overly invested in one particular card. That is it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed this show. For Cody Saftic, I'm Paul Shaughnessy, saying goodbye and good luck.
Oh.